Just a few words by way of introduction. I'm going to moderate this session. And we have 4 fascinating guests with lots of practical experience. We're looking at the question of what the labour market in the tourist sector requires and why are we looking at this. Of course, if you look at the figures, it becomes very clear why this is topical. Trainees in this kind of sector, waiters, receptionists and so on, are lower than ever. It's not because they're not needed, but because most of the training posts can no longer find applicants. 1 in 5 of such traineeships cannot be filled. And it's 1 in 4 in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, which we're looking at today. And even if you look at those who've completed their training, the situation has really worsened. If you look 10 years back in time, you'll see that in the last 10 years, the number of jobs available has doubled. Those are jobs officially notified to the German Federal Employment Agency. There are more and more jobs available, and more jobs can't be filled. They can't find someone to take up the position because there simply are not the qualified staff. So how can you deal with this? How can you find different ways to ensure that people take up these jobs? It's one of the key topics for Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. It's not limited to just a few firms. It really affects the competitiveness of this destination. Therefore, I think it's a fascinating topic for us to address here within the context of the German Tourism Forum. We're going to be looking at that for the next 45 minutes here, looking at how it functions in practice to get to grips with a lack of qualified staff, what it really means on the ground for the firms in question. We'll have a lot of practical insights. We'll all be looking together at potential solutions. Guido Zöllick, president of DEHOGA, the German Hotel and Restaurant Association, is going to fill us in on his perspective on the situation.
Liebe Frau Berndt.
Thank you very much, Ms. Berndt, for that introductory moderation. And, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here to listen to us talking about this topic during the ITB. Glad to see that during the trade fair, so many people are here to talk about this topic. First of all, Germany, as a tourism destination, is more popular than ever. The number of overnight stays in Germany in 2017 hit a new record. 460 million overnight stays in Germany. Germany offers a plethora of different kind of holiday destinations and types of holidays. Not everything, of course, is holiday travel. A lot of it is business travel as well, that has to be said. The hotel and restaurant sector is really at the heart of the tourism business. It's also very important economically for Germany as well. Turnover is up around 3% in this sector for 2017. So another record year, the 8th consecutive record year. The increase in demand means, of course, that there's a demand for more employees as well. 2.2 million employees. 54,000 trainees is the current figure. So we're really at the cutting edge when it comes to training young people in Germany. We really stand alone on that front. There have never been so many people in full-time jobs with proper payment of social security and so on. The Federal Employment Agency indicated 1.75 million employees in the hotel and restaurant sector, compared with the last 10 years, that's 300,000 by way of increase. If you want to express this in terms of percentages, it's a 39% increase in just this short time period. So it's a very positive development, and it's well above the average in Germany, because if you look at all of the other sectors, the increase has only been 19%. The need for qualified staff is going to increase as well. That's our forecast anyway. In our sector, the human factor is absolutely vital. We'll be talking about that later today as well, but we're quite convinced that we'll need a lot of people to work in this sector, particularly in the classical restaurant, bar, cafe sector. This is crucial. If you look at the overnight stays, the turnover and the employment figure, those are very positive, but the flip side is that it's harder and harder for firms to find the right staff. It takes longer and longer, and it's more and more costly for firms to find the right employees. In January 2018, for example, around 40,000 jobs were indicated by the Federal Employment Agency as still being vacant. Now, one of the reasons for that is demographic change, especially if you think about the topic of training. That will become very apparent. There's been a real problem with people leaving schools, graduating from schools, and of course, subsequently, there's also a shortfall when it comes to trainees. More and more young people wish to study at a university. There's around twice as many students as trainees in Germany. The dropout figure for bachelor students, though, is 30% approximately in Germany, which is very high. That should be mentioned at this juncture. That demonstrates perhaps why there is such an employment. I think one of the most important challenges we have in our sector is ensuring that we have properly trained staff and access to a large enough pool of such staff. So what can we do to strike the right balance to overcome this imbalance? One crucial key is in our firms per se. It's important to point this out. Good training ensures that we have well-trained staff. And as entrepreneurs, it's up to us to serve as ambassadors for our sector, to highlight its outstanding prospects for young people and to get the message across to them. It's vital to make clear that these perspectives exist in our sector. We need to invest in high-quality training directed to the future. We need to ensure that we have improved staff loyalty, because if you have motivated, contented staff, that is an enormous asset. That can ensure that we're able to keep our clients happy as well. And of course, that's the way that the loop is closed, that we can continue to increase our sales and turnover in the future as well. A family focus in employment policy is also a key component in the hotel and restaurant association, indeed in the entire hospitality sector. DEHOGA supports firms in a whole host of different ways. For example, we pool the various different quality initiatives, good training for the hosts of tomorrow. That's the name of our project. That's something we manage in DEHOGA centrally in the German Hotel and Restaurant Association. Furthermore, we do outreach to provide information about the outstanding career prospects in this sector and try to encourage people to work in this field. We also have competitions both regionally and nationally. For example, there is our Youth Master competition. That's one that's right across Germany. That exert a real magnetism. I imagine some of you may have read about that or seen the press presentations. And the German Master competition was also in Berlin last year. There was a fantastic concluding photo there in front of the Brandenburg Gate with hordes of enthusiastic, energetic young people. We need to communicate such images and such messages. We do this as the association, but we also need to be very committed, not just to initial training, but to further training as well. DEHOGA offers qualification courses for people to upgrade their qualifications. We have specific projects in the federal states and nationally focusing on work-life balance. For example, as one of the pillars of what we do, we also engage in collective bargaining measures, and we're very keen to ensure that our staff and our members have very positive conditions for their work. So I've told you what DEHOGA does, but of course the whole sector has to act on this front. We all have to pull together, each and every single firm. We expect, of course, as well, that there will be tit for tat, that the public sector will respond to us as well. We expect the dual training system to be enhanced. I mentioned before that more and more young people wish to study. Personally speaking, I think it's fair to say that the dual training system is actually a better way to start this kind of professional career. The dual training system that we have in Germany is one that is the envy of the entire world. We could certainly be a lot prouder of that than we currently are. I would welcome it if there was more public discussion as to whether a degree course or studying at university is really the best stepping stone to a professional career, or whether it might not be better to do some kind of vocational training. Dual training system, for example. We're much more involved in schools, and there's room for improvement on that front too. I'd like to see careers orientation and vocational training be emphasised much more in schools. To respond properly to the lack of qualified staff, we need concepts to ensure the work-life balance can be managed better. That it's possible to combine a professional career and family life, and improved integration of refugees into our firms as well. Our sector needs skilled, qualified staff, possibly from non-EU states as well. We don't just need people with an academic background. In that spirit, the list of professions where qualified staff are in short supply should have the hotel and restaurant sector added to it as well, the entire hospitality sector. There is special legislation as well in Germany on migration into Germany of qualified staff, and such legislation can be very positive for our entire sector. As you've heard, there's a whole host of different facets here. There are economic policy issues, there are training policy issues, there are issues which are specific to our particular sector of the hospitality industry. We'll be discussing these subsequently. But don't forget, above all, that firms will only train young people if they look to the future optimistically, and if they can be told that they have prospects. Because if firms constantly face obstacles, they're not going to feel like taking on staff. We have record after record in this sector, and our achievements should be recognised on this front as well. I'm all the more disappointed when I look to the current coalition treaty, because there the coalition agreement has states on the one hand that the general conditions for tourism are to be improved. They've stated that they recognise the importance of tourism. That's what it says on one page, but a few pages later you see quite blatant contradictions. A plethora of new legislation is envisaged specifically in the realm of employment and social security issues, and the biggest disappointment for our sector relates to working hours. We can't expect any more flexibility on that front. That's the way that the current coalition paper looks, at least. More flexible provisions on working hours is not being authorised for our sector, but I think it would be absolutely crucial. A coalition agreement that's positive for our sector would have to look very different, so we'll need to stick to our guns on that one. Let me sum up then. Hospitality sector, hotels and restaurants is utterly dependent on properly qualified staff. It's already the case today that the quality of what we can offer is maintained, and that will be even more so the case in the future. The association's doing a great deal on this front, as are individual firms. We need support from the world of politics to ensure that we can be good hosts in the future, to enjoy hosting people and welcoming people from all over the world. We're a driving force as tourism firms for all of the German economy, and we need the requisite support. So that was just a very rapid overview of the situation, but I'd like to move on to the panel discussion.
Gleich hier bleiben?
Genau, bleiben Sie am besten gleich hier.
So do stay up here with us. I'd like to ask Roland Fischer from Aaron's Hope to come up. The Hotel Namenlos, Ms. Gertrud Cordes from the Gutshaus Stellshagen, and Alexander Wilhelm from the German Federal Employment Agency.
Die Mitte. Vielleicht starte ich gleich. Ich stelle gleich die Runde auch noch mal ein bisschen genauer vor.
So a very brief introduction. Mr. Zöllick, you are not just president of the DEHOGA German Hotel and Restaurant Association, but you're also general manager of the Hotel NEPTUN in Warnemünde, a 5-star establishment. And you have done this kind of training course that you were just talking about in the hospitality business. I'm now looking around, there's a few young people in the room today. What would you say to young people? What would you advise to them? This profession has so many different facets. It's brand new every day. It's fascinating. You never get bored for an instant. You can have an international career, and you can have a career fairly rapidly as well in various different sectors of the tourism world. You have enormous scope for personal development as well. A lot of what we do in our profession relates to dealings with other human beings, and that's very important. It's very pleasant to be able to be there for other people and to provide services and to help them. And you feel that day in, day out, because people say thank you, you get a nice smell, and that's very positive. Mr. Fischer, I said before that together with your wife you run the Romantik Hotel Namenlos and the Fischerwiege in Ahrenshoop. 55 rooms, around about 50 staff, a bit smaller than Hotel NEPTUN. Now, you're a trained cook, and you're also a top trainer. So I'd like to ask you a similar question. From your point of view, given that you have a lot of contacts with young people who are doing training, what do we need to do to make young people feel like training in this sector? Well, I think that we need a real image campaign for the hotel and restaurant sector. There's some black sheeps in the sector, but there's also our image where people have the impression that you always have to work at the weekend, you have to work on social hours when everybody else is free. There are so many chefs on TV shows. You'd think that every young person would say, oh, I want to do that too. I'm a trained cook myself, and I'm trained in restaurant business as well. And like Mr. Zöllick, I've never been bored. I've always had a lot of fun. And it's always so nice when our guests say thank you and leave the restaurant or hotel really happy with the service they've had. So what can you do to really get this message across? Well, I think we need to move away from our current alpha animal kind of approach to always having to have one upmanship. We have to really focus on a different approach to society, but also on a different approach to the sector. We have better wages than is generally the case in collective bargaining agreements. We've got new provisions on working hours. They now stipulate that you can't work for more than 10 hours. Of course, we stick to that. But of course, you don't send wedding guests home because we can't do any more overtime. But there's new provisions on VAT as well. You often find people going out and just having some fast food in the city rather than wanting to have a proper meal in our hotels. Young people have to be treated as equals. They have to feel comfortable as part of a group. They have to be respected and valued, and when they have needs, we have to respect those needs as well. But we also have to tell them, no, you can only go so far, and then you really have to get down to work. Ms. Cordes, you run the hotel Gutshaus Stellshagen, and you got another hotel as well. Felixien from the Klitzer Winkel was the DJ last night. He also comes from exactly that corner. It's not right on the coast like Warnemünde or Anso, but it's fairly close to the seaside. The special thing about your business is that you're an alternative health practitioner, and you have that kind of health focus for both your guests and your staff. You've got 160 staff, so it's a fairly large business. You said that you don't have much trouble in filling posts when they become vacant. So you seem to be doing a lot of things right in terms of staffing. I'd be interested in that, because if you look at the general situation on the labour market in this sector, you seem to be doing better than others on this front. So what's your recipe for success? I don't know if it's such an enormous success story, but I think the key is to make jobs attractive. Right at the heart of what we do are our guests, but also our staff members. We can't necessarily pay them more. We already do as much as we can, and it's the largest element of our expenditure is our expenditure on staff, but you can make the workplace more attractive. There's a lot of mothers with young children, so you can focus on flexible working hours, which are interesting for mothers. We have health programs, people who want, for example, to stop smoking. We offer them hypnosis or acupuncture. Staff members can share meals in the hotel. They can use the hotel swimming pools and the treatment programs. They can borrow a bicycle or a car, should they so wish. So we make available all of the resources that we can. I think the most important thing is to be prepared to listen. That's also very important for those at management level, and it's very important for us to listen to everybody's worries and concerns. So money is not the whole story. You need to make the jobs attractive, to make the workplace attractive, to respect each and every person who works for you and to treat them in these terms. Now, we also have an expert from the German Federal Employment Agency as well, Alexander Wilhelm. Welcome to you. Now, you're involved in the International Placement Service and International Cooperation. Prior to that, you had many years of experience in the Labour Market Department of the German Confederation of German Employers Associations. You're very experienced in this sector, and I'm glad that you can be with us. Now, you heard Mr. Zöllick's introductory presentation about how important this topic is. And of course, we also have to draw on staff from abroad as well, because such qualified staff are not available in Germany. The ZAV, the International Placement Services, stated this is precisely your role, providing firms with support to find international staff. So what exactly do you do? What can you do for our sector?
Well, when it comes to recruitment of foreign experts, is actually also some work scope of the Federal Employment Agency. Of course, our agency does more than that, like a career orientation, placement of apprentices, experts, posting of experts from Germany and other countries, workplace adjustments. You talked about refugees as well. Now, that certainly is also an important part of our work, where we, the agency, and also our job centres are doing a lot already. In those past year and a half or 2 years, we have been quite successful with the hospitality industry there as well. Now, targeted recruitment from abroad of experts, that is, that has gained relevance also in a number of industries where we have bottlenecks when it comes to staffing vacancies. Especially in Germany, that is true in the hospitality industry. We just talked about that before, and I know for your business as well, there's something we can do, and indeed we do already. We are operating an international placement service department. We are a specialized agency of the federal government, and we deal with that. We have had good experience, I must say, in those past years. We're focusing, or let me say it differently. In 12 different places in Germany, we operate an international personnel service department. That department, together with the employer organization, will support those companies that need to recruit people from abroad for work here in Germany. So they're reporting their vacancies to us, saying, I'm looking for a qualified employee abroad. And then people say, yes, that certainly is a priority, not only from abroad, mind you, but also from Germany. And then this is where our international placement services come into play. We try and recruit and find people for them. In those past years, we've had good experience with the hospitality industry for finding apprentices from other EU countries. In fact, there has been a federal support scheme of German government. So whenever you recruit people abroad, you need to bear a number of things in mind, like language training. True, of course, for the hospitality industry. So people need to meet a certain level of German skills, German language skills, plus English, obviously, as a desired add-on. That we need to make sure as well. It's important for the work, but it also is important to meet the requirements of a vocational training institution in Germany. We've had some good experience with that in those past years. That funding scheme of the German government has now been phased out. So that obviously was limited in time, but it has made a major contribution towards jump-starting that effort. Because you need a certain structure in place for foreign language training, reimbursement of travel expenses, etc., that has to be assured. Otherwise, we couldn't do that out of our own accord because we don't have a legal basis for that. So it was thanks to that government subsidy at the time. So yes, we've learned a lot from this program, and we'll see where we go from here. Now, with our new incoming government, we will see where they're putting the focus. But generally, in Europe, it's true that we have had really good exchange with the hospitality industry and recruiting in hotel or hospitality schools in Croatia and Spain and Greece also. We work with a number of employers to organize on-site visits abroad, where we are actually selecting young talent for the jobs here in Germany. Now, something that Mr. Zöllick mentioned that we cannot do at this moment is to actually recruit people from outside the European Union, with the exception of the so-called Western Balkan states, Kosovo, Albania, Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay, let me follow up on that one. You just mentioned it a moment ago because you want to have an immigration act for experts. You talked about a positive list. Why is that? Can I have some practical arguments? Why do you urgently need that? Do you think the situation would fundamentally change if there was now the right frameworks? Now, first and foremost, we want to have access to that part of the world population that lives outside the European Union. We shouldn't be as complacent as to say that, in the EU we have the good service providers and these are the only ones that know how to do it. There's all over the world so many good tourism industries at the moment. We are celebrating record-breaking numbers. Well, why is that? Because of the political situation globally. And if you look at the hotels at the Egyptian coastline, there are many well-trained people in no man's land that had no guests to cater to. Now, in this country, conversely, it would make sense, of course, to bring in more international staff from other countries. So there are certainly entrepreneurs ready and willing to hire even more people. So, in other words, I'm talking about pragmatic things that so far don't match. So therefore, I don't quite understand when people say that we're always moaning and complaining about vacancies and we cannot fill those. And then conversely, everyone is saying, no, statistically speaking, you're not part of a deficiency profession, so we cannot fill them with international candidates. So this should be coordinated much better. And therefore, we need to create equal opportunities to recruit more talent. No cruise ship in this world would work if it was open and transparent in terms of hiring international talent. So this is not much different in the hospitality industry. We're similar to a cruise ship, only we're ashore and not out there on the waters. Now, you talked about an immigration law before. Have you had experience with international guests, Mr. Fischer, in your own hotel? Now, Mobi Pro was a case in point. That program has been mentioned. You're already working there, aren't you? Well, that's true. This is how we started our work. And the Mobi Pro program has been a very positive showcase there. Now, here's the problem. We train those young people, and then they return home to their countries. Now, out of those many people that we trained, they're leaving us. This is a disappointment. However, this is also very good economic support. We have a dual-track vocational training system in this country. We train people and they then pass it on as multipliers. That's not a bad idea either. Now, I've had good experiences, good contacts with Ukraine, with Slovakia. We're in ongoing contact with those people and also motivate people to nourish these contacts. Now, the parents of children that have been trained within the Mobi Pro program are now requesting to send their other children to Germany to get vocational training as well. So that is positive, but our authorities are, drawing up obstacles. Just recently, I had the Customs Control Office in my place because I called people in Ukraine saying, I need help from your country to help us out there. So they jumped on a bus, traveled to my country. I registered them as workers, no problem at all. But still, between Christmas and the New Year, people came in from the Customs Control Office telling me they're not allowed to work in Germany anymore because they have a track record of 89 days of working in this country. And these are problems that I cannot understand. And, if you have a proper employment contract, that employer must make sure that everything is right and everything is legally waterproof. And of course they pay into our sickness insurance funds. Why is that not acceptable? Why can't people from abroad come to this country to work as much as they like? And Mr. Zöllick is absolutely right. Look to Turkey or Tunisia or Egypt. They're in the Kempinski Hotel, loads of people, but no guests or not enough. They would be happy to make more money and come to our country to work. And they can feed their families. We would be helping them. That's development aid on our part, isn't it? No matter what country young people come from, or generally employees in the hotel and hospitality industry work, they are treated as equals. We pay them the same salaries. They pay their contributions into the social schemes. And I don't understand why that is not acceptable. Now, since you're here as an expert, what do you think the opportunities are? You see there's a major demand on the part of the companies there, or the employers, and there's also some huge potential in foreign markets. Now, how can you match those two? How can you reconcile that and actually make the fine-tuning? Okay, now I'm going to say something that's probably not going to go down well, but the fact of the matter is this. There's always a situation where you have individual problems in filling a vacancy. I mean, many people feel that. It's true. But then we have a legal basis which analyzes employment bottlenecks and has a positive list to make sure that we have a valuable evidence-related basis on which we create criteria for a facilitation and in-migration of foreign workers outside the European Union. And that assessment is based on our Federal Employment Agency's analyses. And what professions, what job profiles should be on that list is a political decision, but it's based on our employment bottleneck analysis. And there we look at all of the vacancies reported to our agency related to the number of unemployed people who are registered as unemployed in this job profile looking for a job within Germany. So that's number one. Then number two, we look at the vacancy periods. How long has a job position been vacant? And a third element, how has the duration of a job vacancy developed over the course of the year compared to the year before? And drawing all of these criteria together, a number of bottleneck profession profiles or job profiles are developed. And true, that is true not only for the hospitality industry, for all industries as well. So, and there we see, yes, there are a number of job profiles like social care, like medical care, like engineering professions where we don't have enough people. Now, if you want to solve the situation for the hospitality industry, you have to follow this legal framework, unless the legislator takes a different decision. But that's not for us to decide, right? If the legislator says, okay, we develop a different assessment criteria for demands-oriented labor migration, then we can do that. But if there isn't such a mechanism in place, we cannot. So this is not at all about objecting to the needs and expectations of industry, but there's only so much we can do. We work on a certain legal basis. But beyond that, there's always the option of a regional assessment of the federal employment agencies. And then if ever there is some special urgent need of a certain region in Germany to fill job vacancies, that this will be factored in as well in the overall account. Because that would then, and maybe we shouldn't underestimate that, this is the precondition for a facilitated in-migration. Even if a job is on the positive list, these people would still have to meet a requirement, and a number of requirements, and a very central requirement also for the hospitality industry is to have a comparable job qualification, comparable to Germany. And that's true for all skilled workers from third countries. Otherwise, they're not going to get a residence permit in this country. This is the fact of the law. This is a legal basis that we cannot circumvent, and this is true for the entire job placement industry. Okay, you've seen the response here on the panel that this is not something that has been going down too well. But obviously, we're not going to find the silver bullet here today, but maybe this is a good start into a future debate when it comes to the future frameworks that are not quite fitting so well. Let me add, if I may. Now, where things work well, and because there are options and we have different legal ramifications, that is related also to the attractiveness of labor conditions and also the option of a social security, and that is training, vocational training projects for applicants from third countries. But all of that is only possible depending on remuneration, i.e. apprenticeship pay, and what costs will be borne by the employers, because there's no funding structure. If you're not meeting a minimum remuneration, minimum pay, and we're talking about 800 euros per month for apprentices, the foreign embassies, our foreign diplomatic missions, will not grant a visa. Those who travel from abroad to Germany must be able to fund their own subsistence in Germany out of their own sources. And that can only be done if the employer has their share to play there. And obviously, if there's a differing decision then taken by the federal government, new political ramifications coming into place, then we obviously will be happy to support that, selecting the right candidates, support employers in those endeavors. And I think the experience that we've had was actually quite good, like Mobi Pro, as a case in point. And with that, let me switch topics a bit. because Mr. Zöllick also has touched on the labor times law. And now, Ms. Cordes, we have talked about that at length before. Well, despite your numerous activities in your company, you are always, well, in a way, hitting a wall when it comes to labor time regulations. Now, what's the problem? What's the problem with working times? How's that relevant? No, it doesn't limit me in what I do. I was just saying it's not on my page. Well, it is on the page of Mr. Zöllick, because I think he really wants to say something about that. Yes, we're talking about flexibility of daily maximum working times, which currently is 10 hours by law as we speak today. Now, quite explicitly, this is not about having people work more, longer and harder, but working times should be distributed flexibly and respond to the wishes and expectations of our guests, because guests don't follow laws, right? And the expectations vis-à-vis a service provider are different today than they were 20 or 30 years ago. So we have to face the reality of everyday business. So sometimes people need to work longer than 10 hours. And then possibly the day after, when they come back in, they work only 4 hours to make sure that over the course of the week, you do not exceed the maximum capacity of 40 hours. So flexibility in day-to-day work. This is what we want. Just the example we heard a moment ago about a certain festival or festivity that's going on. Say if you have a wedding party, you cannot rest assured that people actually stay until 2 o'clock at night, but maybe leaving longer. So what do you do with your staff if they're refusing to serve them? Okay, so we're conjuring up a situation here that is not really in line with our current sentiments. I think that we need urgent change, urgent also legal modifications of the laws. Now, the next term in office of the government already excludes our industry, because as far as I'm reading the coalition agreement, there's talk about industry-specific concerns. There's mentioning of labor representation. Well, we are an industry that is small and medium-sized. We have 5, 6, sometimes 10 employees in one hotel. They have no labor representation, no trade unions, not because they don't want it or because it's bad, but because it's just a small group of family-owned businesses. You don't need those labor representatives, and you can talk directly to people. I have people in my hotel who say, now that I'm here, I have childcare for my kids. I'll be happy to stay on for another 2 hours. I'll be happy to serve my guests for these extra 2 hours rather than going home early and telling them, another waiter will come in to take care of you. Now, for me personally, that would be provide much more appreciation vis-à-vis the guest, and then instead tomorrow I work less. So these are relevant situations, current situations, and we need more leeway as employers, and we need more flexibility from the legislators there. Okay, with that, let me venture into yet another area here. There was a headline in the Ostsee-Zeitung, the North Germany, talking about a lack of skilled labor, saying that robots should take the roles of waiters in Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania. Did you read that? Because the media are telling us that the digitization of labor will make headway and more jobs can be replaced by artificial intelligence and robots. This will make life for all of us easier. I mean, that is interesting because we're discussing exactly against the backdrop of a lack of skilled labor. There's no one there to do the job. Then possibly it might be worthwhile to ask the question, can't a robot come in or roll in to replace the service staff out there? So maybe, Ms. Cordes, could you think about that? Because you talked about the human factor a lot. Do you think there are any areas where robots might help us, or artificial intelligence?
Well, you need to look at this in a nuanced sort of way. Perhaps in the accounting department, perhaps you could help with filing and planning the service rota as well. You can use digitalization there, but certainly not in contact with guests. People come to us to be taken care of by other humans. They come from this digitalized universe and they want to experience the natural world. They want to calm down. They want to get away from all of that stress. And of course, they want someone to talk to them. That's certainly the case at reception, It's also the case in the health sector. We've got a special event tomorrow looking at spas, looking at what we call wellness. So touch is important as well, and the human touch. That's what it's all about when you talk about, for example, a massage. When you're giving a spa treatment, you want to have your guest relaxing and feeling comfortable and at ease. So I think perhaps in the back office you could have digitalisation, certainly, but not in the front office side of things in contacts with the guest. Mr. Fischer, will you have a robot at reception? Well, no, certainly not. Maybe, perhaps, in the back office. Certainly, perhaps you could get a special machine to polish the glasses. That's one thing. But the real crux of our business and the quality of our business is the human touch. The human factor is essential in Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania, and that human touch involves creating a sense of surprise, contacting the guest, feeding meals to guests which they enjoy. You can have robots cutting the grass, you can have them cleaning the terrace, that's all fine and dandy. But you can't imagine having a hotel and gastronomy sector without any human beings. That simply wouldn't work. We've been told we've only got 5 minutes left now, so let's move on to a very brief closing round. Just a few words from each one of you in a nutshell. Points that you really wanted to get off your chest, the message that you want to give the guests here as their take-home message. Well, I think in my statement before, I touched on 3 to 4 points that we expect from the world of politics. Everybody who has any kind of link to this sector should do what Mr. Fischer was talking about, exuding a positive image, exuding a positive attitude to our sector. It's very important to me that we see and underline the positive aspects of our sector. The Chancellor said this very nicely yesterday as well. We need to look at everything that has worked well, not just focusing on mishaps. We need to look at those positive sides of our experience and positive experience we can have in the future. We're an optimistic, cheerful sector. Without the tourism sector and the hotel and restaurant sector, things would be a bit gloomy. Ms. Cordos. I was talking to one of my staff yesterday. We were actually talking about the new data protection legislation. It's been very well presented so that normal people, so to speak, can understand that. But what I notice in the office is that there's an enormous amount of red tape. We're confronted with that day in and day out. We can't enjoy working with our guests as we used to because we're busy the whole time filling out forms. And the question really is, as an SME, do I really have to do that? I'm a fairly medium-sized firm. Do I really have to do that? I'd like to have more respect for normal, medium-sized companies that can't always fill out all the forms and keep everybody happy, be it the EU or the German government or whoever. Less bureaucracy would be great. I'm in a fortunate enough situation to have handed on the firm to my children. I'll be involved for the next 5 to 10 years, perhaps. I'm looking forward to that. I hope that the motivation I've had for the last 40 years will continue, that I'll manage to pass on the baton, that it'll be possible to keep on training young people. I've had so many trainees in my life, and I've always enjoyed that. I've got some staff who've been in my company for 30 years, and I'm delighted about that. And they're bringing the next generation to the firm as well. That's a great source of joy for me. I don't want to go into all the ins and outs of this, but certainly saying positive words about Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania is something that I was very pleased to hear yesterday from Ms. Merkel as well. So there's a lot of positive feedback from the sector. And yes, we need that kind of praise as well in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern and in the entire sector. We actually started by talking about the labour market and the associated challenges, and you made that very clear as well. We always need to bear in mind that it is a hugely important sector. It has a huge impetus on the employment front in Germany as well. So there's a question of what we can do well together, developing new approaches on the basis of what we've done to date as well. There are some systems that we've seen have worked well in the past, for example, finding qualified staff abroad, offering people who are looking for a job training in Germany, for example, slotting them into the hospitality industry. I think if we do work together and all pull in the same direction, we'll be able to do very well to keep the ball rolling on the employment frontier. We all like to go on holiday. We all like to go to the pub. This is something which should really be close to the heart of all of us. So you're encouraging discussion, dialogue. Certainly, well, yes, we are already all working together. We're all in contact with another. We haven't found exactly the right way to move ahead together, but it would be wonderful if we could continue to move in the right direction, find ourselves at the right kind of crossroads, and to think not just in terms of statistics, but also in pragmatic terms. That would sometimes be very positive for Germany. Thank you very much for being with us. I'd ask everybody who's here, Mr. Berndt as well, let me invite you to the next session, which starts at 5, looking at the question of quality, focusing not so much on staff, but rather on guests. So do please stay with us for the next session, starting at 5.